Welcome to Real Smart, the real estate podcast you've been waiting for. I'm Spencer Kallick, a real estate and land use attorney at Matkins. On this show, I sit down with some of the most dynamic and accomplished voices in real estate to explore trends shaping the industry and uncover what truly sets great leaders apart. Hey everyone, welcome back to Real Smart. Today I'm joined by Shawn Gehle, an award-winning architect and co-founder of Office Untitled, an LA-based design studio, led major design studios at top firms like Gensler, BNIM, and his work has been recognized by the AIA, AIGA, and featured in leading design publications. But what sets him apart is really his ability to blend bold creativity and technical insight. Shawn, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
I appreciate, whenever I see you, you're always very sharply dressed, dark clothes, but you got the Rocket Man socks on today. Thank you for spicing it up a little bit.
As I mentioned, I want to make sure that I just bring some levity to this conversation and distract you in the best of ways.
Absolutely. Well, this is a real treat for me because not only are you a great architect that we work on lots of projects together, also a good friend. I've known you for many years. And you were just about to regale us with, or maybe embarrass me. How did we meet? I can't even remember how we met.
I think this goes back actually, I've been in LA. I just celebrated my 20th anniversary this past weekend. And I think we met shortly after I came to Los Angeles on a fairly large project while I was at Gensler.
Was this the Reef?
It was the Reef.
The infamous Reef.
The infamous
One
Reef.
day it'll get built, God willing.
Yeah, great project, and obviously a great relationship came out of it, and several projects at various firms and various histories. And
so let's talk about that. Obviously, we know you've been at a couple different shops, as is normal with most architects, but several years ago, you and two other partners founded Office Untitled, which I always struggle to call OU, or people call it Office Unlimited. We could do a whole podcast about why you called it Office Untitled, but tell us a bit about what is Office Untitled, what is your kind of design philosophy, and what sets you apart from lots of other design firms that are out there?
We're coming around to almost 10 years. I met two of my partners 20 years ago. I met our third partner a little bit over 20 years ago with Lindsay. When we all got together and formed Office Untitled, the real idea was that we wanted to have a very intimate relationship with the work. We had been at large shops. We had been at multiple shops, several of us. And one of the things that we wanted to do was just work on the work, be actively engaged with clients and have great projects, and not only focus on LA, but focus on great architecture. And that started in 2017, and it's been a great run ever since. And certainly the name Office Untitled brings up a lot of questions, but there's an intentional ambiguity around that name, which is that it's not solely linked to any of us as partners. It's really this collective of incredibly ambitious and audacious creatives that are making up the studio, primarily backed by architecture education, but just an incredible force, creative force.
So how did you get into the architecture game? Just wake up one day and you're like, I want to be an architect, or what drew you to architecture?
Well, I come from a background where my mother was from the Midwest. My dad lived here in LA as a creative, and I watched him operate as a creative his entire life. And for me, I always was into making. I loved making things. I loved drawing.
You were a kid with like the Legos and stuff when you were a little kid. That basically became now you're an architect.
Legos. My grandmother used to give me things to take apart to put back together. I just loved making things. And my wife, who incredibly creative,
also an architect. Let's be fair.
Also an architect.
She should probably be on her own. She probably should be on this podcast.
She should come to your podcast.
We'll make it happen.
And so, we have two creative kids, and I see a lot of the same things, which is they're getting their ideas out all the time, making things, graphic things. And for me, that ultimately sort of built up and into an interest in architecture and the built environment. And it happened over many, many years.
So I wish that folks on this podcast could go to your studio. One day we'll do like an actual tour and figure out a way to incorporate it all. But your studio is a very creative place. And I go to lots of different architecture studios. They always look very cool furniture where you're like, I'm not sure if I can sit on that. What does it, what's this mean? But you're always surrounded by your work is what I've found. You've got your work up on the wall. You've got your work in models. I've even seen some of the models that are made out of Legos. Talk to me about the space where you're doing architecture.
Yeah, for us, the office is truly a studio, an atelier environment. It's based around a real interest in materiality and making things. This notion of prototyping is a big part of the way that we explore work and the way that we describe our work to our clients and ultimately to municipalities that we go out and talk to with you and with others. For us, coming into the studio is the sort of exclamation point is the model shop, which you see in the back of the space. And the entire space is built around this idea of, living and breathing the work from start to finish.
It looks like fun. There's 3D printers in there. There's Legos. sometimes I'm like, are you actually working here? Or are you just kind of playing around? What's
Yeah, we
going
have a
on?
clay printer now. We're printing in clay, which was some of the exploration, working on some terracotta prototypes and looking at different projects. So always prototyping, always making things. It's this lo-fi, hi-fi approach that we have at OU, which is really taking low fidelity studies and then balancing that out with very hi-fi or optimization software-based solutions as well.
So when I think about architects, there are lots of amazing architects that are out there, and there's a lot of distinct styles, right? Like everyone can see a Frank Gehry building, for instance, and know Frank was involved in that. What is the OU style?
Well, it's great to hear this question because I think we get it asked a lot. We're also just so early in our development that I think what's beginning to emerge is a sensibility that people can begin to recognize. But if you look at work like Frank's office or so many of the great offices that are in LA that have been around for decades and decades that are around a sole individual, the style emerges over time. And for us, I think our sensibility as a collective is beginning to emerge. But it is around an audacity of materials. It's around a scale of projects. Our work started with very small scale residential work, multifamily work, which is strong lineage in Los Angeles of offices starting on residential work. But we've been able to scale quite rapidly from very small scale projects to very large projects. I mean, we had the 727 project on Grand, the data center that we're working on with you. We have a project on 6000 Hollywood Boulevard, which at this point includes a 400-foot tower, and another project on Sunset Boulevard, another tower. So the work really scales in a lot of different directions. We have the Heartburst work that we've done in Burning Man and all the pavilions and media follies on Sunset Boulevard.
So you started mentioning a couple of different projects, some of which we may be working on together. Although I haven't been to Burning Man yet. I think that's just an excuse for you guys to go have fun down at Burning Man.
We're trying to get you there.
And get it, to be a tax write-off of some sort. I don't know. But talk to me a bit about, do you have a favorite type of project? Is it multifamily? Is it office? Is it anything that'll pay the bills? Is it something that a client that lets you spend whatever you want and make something beautiful? It's probably all the above, but what's in your heart? What really gets you excited?
I mean, for me personally and leading the office, I think it's really around clients and not necessarily projects. I think you look at the project types that are in the office, and they have a fairly wide variety of project types, all of which are equally and amazingly interesting. But clients who tend to gravitate towards the office have a level of ambition and audacity around what they want to do, and that syncs pretty well with the office. I mean, it's just that mix tends to result in really exciting projects. And for us, really exciting relationships. Our office has been able to grow through a lot of repeat clients and clients who ultimately speak highly and really speak to the work of the office in a really positive way. So type-wise, always the next project. We get asked a lot of times, have we ever done this before? And never done a data center. That was a great project. We're super excited to work on that. We've never done a children's museum. We did work and finished that with the Caton family.
That's an amazing museum. My kids go there all the time.
Yeah, and your family has a space in it. So there's always a project we've never done before, and those tend to be the ones that really excite the studio, and I think really excite clients because they get a version of OU that they know is possible, that they know is in there.
Yeah, my experience, again, I think we're working on probably a couple dozen projects right now with your office. One of the things that's really sets you apart is your creativity, your flexibility, your being able to speak to lots of different constituencies, whether it's the local officials, whether it's stakeholders in the community, and then also investors and sophisticated real estate clients. And one of the things I've seen that really does set you apart is there's not one way to get it done. You're flexible. We might name names later, but we won't for right now. I can think of one client where I think we're on scheme 5,634, perhaps. But talk about, in this world, in this economy, in this current economic reality, what things you've had to do to adjust or to help make projects pencil and move forward right now.
Well, I think the firm has always gained a reputation of being quite easy to work with in terms of a willingness to explore ideas and to look at variations. Yes, there are projects that just tend to go through a high level of optionality, and we do count the options just so that we can kind of keep track of how many versions.
That's for billing purposes or just for your own purposes?
It's for our own purposes for sure, but it's certainly something that reinforces the amount of rigor that is inside of our process in terms of looking for and being curious at a very deep level to try to find what is the optimal response to whatever the given conditions are. And those conditions, as you point out, have changed over the last several years and certainly over the last decade. both from a legislative point of view, but also from a creative and market point of view. I mean, what penciled and made sense 10 years ago is not necessarily the same solution that, works today.
So in that changing environment, in that changing landscape, what is the next kind of trend? What is the next kind of innovation that you are looking at, either to make projects pencil or to make projects even architecturally more interesting, and perhaps both?
Yeah, from a trend standpoint, I think there are a couple things locally that are gonna just, gain real traction and move pretty fast. I did a TED Talk, at this point, it's almost been 15 years ago, on adaptive reuse of office buildings. And, while at the time, a lot of people asked a lot of questions on, what it would take to get to that point, I would argue that we are now there, that the point of the availability and vacancy of office buildings to be converted into something other than office buildings, which has always been a trend. You look at, everything from the Standard Hotel, which used to be an office building, to Pegasus Apartments downtown, all throughout the city and nationally. There's always been a trend to convert office buildings to some other use. It's just now it is in full tilt hyper acceleration.
Because the values of those properties are so much lower, and because there's new innovations in fire code and things like that.
Because of the amount of occupancy, because of ability to conduct work legitimately from different locations, and regardless of what your position is on return to office or return to work, there's just a sort of hyper compression that's happened. And so, you have great chassis, great buildings that do exist that have the potential to have a life beyond what their original use case was. I think that's a huge opportunity, and it's going to come.
So it's not in the door yet, but it's funny because I feel like everyone and their mother talks about conversion of office to residential. I started joking with our marketing folks that if I get asked to speak on another office at a residential panel, I would shoot my brains out, because it's just not happening here in California, at least as I've seen. Maybe a few kind of far in between. What is it really about to happen, or what's about to change? There's only the new building code that's coming out that's going to allow that to happen, or what is it?
There's just a point of financial capitulation that kicks in. I'm just be honest. It's the point where you get to where the value has reached a point of threshold.
Rock bottom, let's say it. We're close there too.
It reaches a point where the bones of the building are what is salvageable. You're not trying to reconstitute it in its original form, which means you can effectively get rid of some stuff and not feel like you're burdened by it. I think we are there. If we are not there, we are very close, within arm's reach, maybe even hand's reach of being there. And then you're going to need to have legislative and financial mechanisms that support that. Financial stacks historically haven't really supported vertically segregated uses in buildings. You see this in Japan, you see it all over the world, where you can put a hotel on top of a restaurant, on top of some residential. Maybe you slide in a data center and you do something else in the middle of it. And that allows you to have
true mixed use,
true diversity of income streams. But the capital stacks historically in the United States haven't supported that.
You mean someone has bought an office building, for instance, as part of their office fund, and they can only do office there, they can't do more?
100%.
Got it.
Right. And so, once there's flexibility that opens up in that regard, that will help. I think from a code standpoint, yes, there are some code things that have kicked forward, but there isn't really the next step, which is the sort of tax incentives that want to incentivize vitality, that want to take cities and want to take vacancy and turn it on its ear and really kickstart people being back together again, to going to places and being back together. And that's going to come from a certain amount of density. So,
all right, so we've got office to resi conversion. What other trends are you seeing? For a while, everyone was talking about mass timber.
Yeah.
That's still a thing? Or I haven't heard someone talk about mass timber in, a year or two now.
Definitely a thing. I think here in California and certainly in LA, we have some hurdles to get over relative to the connections, the number of manufacturers that provide those connections, the city's willingness to allow a variety of manufacturers to provide supply to that. That will change the economics of it. When you have very few number of manufacturers, it makes the cost of it quite prohibitive. Right now I think one of the biggest trends that's going to come is the impact of the wood supply in response to the Altadena, Eaton fire, Palisades fires, how wood supply is going to reconcile single family rebuilds with multifamily next generation of construction.
So you're saying, to break it down, because there's going to be so much wood required for the rebuild these single family homes, that there's not the wood to build your, what we would call traditionally 5/2 stick, frame construction. And so as a result, there needs to be some sort of innovation. Those can be built with cement, with steel, with maybe some other new materials that we're not even knowing about yet.
Yeah, and I mean, the innovation could come from a new material, but it could just come from the instigation that the supply will be impacted by the amount of single family rebuilding and just residential building in general that's going to happen with wood, that will happen with wood. And the response will be that type 1 concrete or steel buildings will, in my opinion, see an opportunity to
That'll become the new norm.
It will have a much more competitive landscape to operate in. Historically, wood has been so low in its value proposition. You can enter in very inexpensively, and then
you can go down to Home Depot, right, and pick up a 2x4.
Yeah, but that's, I think we're on the cusp of a competition landscape that will be slightly different. That also then kicks into the opportunity of what you can do in type 1. If you look at the project that we completed, a great project here in West Hollywood, the Harlan. The front of that project along Doheny, that's all out of concrete because of the zoning in that particular site. However, the rear portion of that site is all done out of wood. And you can see the amount of animation, the amount of activation on the facade on Doheny, how different it is from the side streets, which are all done out of wood, because there's just some limitations in terms of what you can do.
You mentioned the Harlan. That's, I think, as I understand it, the highest price per square foot rents of anywhere else in the state of California. Is that correct?
History of the West Coast, but also just recently sold and will be converted to condos, and which was the original intent for that project. That project was delivered right at the beginning of COVID and pivoted out of condos and immediately went into the rental market. Has enjoyed a great run, as you.
Yeah, that's a great project. Thanks to Faring.
Yeah.
And I heard they had a good architect as well.
We have had a great time on that project. Ton of awards, a lot of great press. Everyone loves to tour that project. So,
I love it. You mentioned briefly the fires that have impacted Southern California. Are you guys? When I think of you, I think of towers. I think of amazing projects. But are you all involved in the rebuilding of the Palisades and Eaton fire area as well?
Yeah, so I mean, we certainly have a great portfolio of single-family residential work, both larger single-family and some compound work. It's not always work that we're able to talk about publicly or you'll see on the website, but it's certainly a portion of our portfolio. It's been covered in the Wall Street Journal in terms of the Brentwood House, but it is something that we're very interested in. There are a lot of conversations going on in both those municipalities and locations. There's great advocacy in the Palisades, but there's a lot of challenges from access in terms of being able to rebuild and get supplies and labor into the Palisades. And, Altadena is almost the exact opposite. It has an incredible amount of access, but it's going to have a real challenge from an advocacy standpoint because of just where it sits. For us, we've been involved in a lot of the strategy conversations around that, but we're also waiting to see kind of where things begin to shake out in terms of real activity. I actually just drove through the Palisades this weekend. It had been a while, but it's just amazing the amount of work that the Corps of Engineers have done. It's just a huge shout out to all the effort that's gone on to prepare for rebuilding. And I just want to acknowledge everyone who's been involved in that because
it literally takes a village and then some.
It does, but there are real boots on the ground that are really heavily involved actively today making things happen. And I want to acknowledge that work. For us, we're really trying to help everybody get in the best position for what comes after this. But
can I acknowledge you for a second? Because there's a lot of talk. I can acknowledge you for a lot of reasons, but one of the things I know you all have done has been super helpful with some schools, getting them back up on their feet. Maybe you want to talk a little bit about that post-fire if you can.
We had a great client in BXP who it was an introduction actually through you.
If Melissa's listening, hey Melissa.
Yes, hi Melissa. I had texted so many friends, as I think we all did in Los Angeles over several days, and I wrote Melissa, and one of the things that had come out of it was the school that her kids went to, her two boys, which is the Village School in the Palisades, was one of the schools that was completely and totally taken over by the fire in downtown Palisades. And so we immediately jumped into action and we helped the Village School get back into space within less than 2 weeks. From the fires to being back together as a community, they were together in less than 2 weeks. Now, they were in space that was very, very much, ad hoc, but they were together as a community. And I think this is one of the lessons we all learned from COVID, which is that being apart for very long really tears at the fabric of community, right? And so the goal was to get them back as soon as possible. The city of Santa Monica, SIA, everyone at the city of Santa Monica was incredible to work with. But we were pretty pioneering from a standpoint of we were going in a direction where no one had really gone before, putting schools in office buildings and then a K through 6 school, at that. So it's been a great project.
Thank you for doing that. I mean, I know that took a lot of work and a lot of sleepless nights, but that's a huge effort.
They just wrapped up their school year, moved out, and we are kicking off version 2 of the rebuild and some additional build out for that space as they really assess what's next for their school. They've been a great client. They've been a great group to work with, and happy that we could help.
I love that. So you design beautiful spaces. Maybe talk to us a bit about, and you're not allowed to pick a favorite client, but pick a couple. What are some of your favorite projects you've ever worked on, and why? What made them stand out?
Well, I mean, I would say there are a couple projects for sure sticking out for me right now. I think one, the Ava Arts District project, which we also worked on together.
The Avalon Bay project in the Arts District of Los Angeles. Yeah.
That's right. It was a great project. It was the first project as I left Gensler. It was 500,000 square foot, so not a bad project to be an inaugural project. It'd be the 5th tallest building in Los Angeles if you turned it, on its side and made a good vertical. The client, Mark Yonda, was incredible to work with, and we got to explore a lot of material and kind of formal ideas in that project, work with a great artist in Priscilla Witt. That was a great project. I think the Caton Children's Museum.
Anyone listening who's got kids, the best children's museum, I think, in Los Angeles, and I'm biased, but it's a very cool place. But go ahead.
Incredibly photogenic, filled with memories. It was one of the projects that is just awesome because my kids are in all of our final photography. So every time I get to show that project and talk about it, I see my kids a couple years ago. So that's always a super fun project. And then I'm really excited about a project we're working on. I can't tell the client, but we're working on a project in Santa Monica where we're getting to work with a tech company, and we have a couple things that are just getting ready to go into construction that'll be done by the end of the year. Super exciting, some really low scale but high material exploration going on in this project. And lastly, the Digital Realty project, which you and I are working on in 727, which is the data center in downtown Los Angeles. And I think there's just a lot of opportunity around this space. I know this is a purpose-built data center, but I think there's a lot of opportunity from the positive byproduct out of data centers that cities and communities can tap into if they are sort of thought about in that way. So
I hope the folks are going to the OU website to check out some of these things because, a picture's worth a million words, right? So it definitely does. You guys do beautiful, beautiful work. It's not always enough just to make something beautiful, though. And one of the things that I found that you really specialize in, and your partners as well, is being able to translate your vision, your architecture, the way you're creating a built environment to different stakeholders, in particular cities. And I think that's one of the areas where you really excel is, lack of a better way of putting it, selling the dream. How do you do that? What's your approach? And what makes your style in that regard different than maybe others?
I think first we tend to sync up with clients who are just generally interested in contributing communities in a really positive way. So our role in terms of, you call it selling, I just call it describing.
Whatever you want to call it, you're good at it. I mean,
I think
I've seen you turn on that Shawn Gehle charm. It makes a difference.
I think the point is that there's a very genuine interest from everyone, myself and each of our partners and the principals in the firm who speak to work, is just describing work that really is considered from a point of view of adding value to communities and allowing people to see what maybe they don't see at first blush and letting them into that experience. And that's something that we don't really talk about in terms of like trying to teach people in the office, but it does become inherent in the way the process is run through the office is that, work comes from a point of being very good community stewards, and clients allow us to do that. And the clients that we enjoy the most working with are ones who also share that same vision. And that's here. We're doing a great project in San Diego. I just got back from doing a city planning commission meeting, and the same comment. I mean, it's, yes, there are things that can tweak and push and pull, but generally community sees that the efforts being made to make this a place that is compatible and contributive to the community is a real fundamental part of OU's work.
You do lots of different kinds of work. I've seen all different types of product types. Well, let's talk about housing. We talked about it a bit already. We have a huge housing crisis here in California.
Yeah.
What's it going to take to solve that housing crisis? And what is OU's role in that equation?
Well, our role, first and foremost, is to understand where in the overall cycle we sit and what we can actually truly influence.
By the way, if you can answer that question, I'll be very impressed.
Well, my answer is that I'm cognizant of where we sit in the stream of decisions that are necessary to solve the housing crisis. What I can tell you is that there are limiters that exist inside of the city of Los Angeles that are making any kind of development at a commercial level very, very difficult.
You're talking about ULA or something? In the
ULA, I would say, number one, has put a really...
for those who don't know what ULA is, that's the quote-unquote mansion tax that makes it very cost prohibitive to do deals right now.
Yes, but the mansion tax is a little bit, and I would say a lot of bit, misleading in terms of its name, because it's
Correct.
not just about...
It was posited as a mansion tax, but it's really about any properties over $5 million.
Yeah, and what it's effectively done is just completely and totally stopped developments from happening. And you see this in the city's projections of revenue. You see this in the number of deals. You see this in the number of permits being pulled. It is just had a series of consequences. I would like to think they are unforeseen. I don't think anyone did this maliciously to like put the kibosh on things.
It was a confluence of both the economy being challenged and elections and changes to our city council and just where we are in the real estate cycle.
So, I mean, for us, we are a service provider. So when things move in a direction of development, we do benefit from it. But I think what I would say in general is that the city and the state and communities in general, we need to find a way to activate vitality back into our cities. We need to get people getting back together outside in places, have community that's about gathering. And that, to me, work is around that, recreation's around that. And there's just a lot of infrastructure here that's come to the end of its life cycle and needs to be invested in. And a lot of these systems that are in place, they actually have been put in to slow down growth. And now we need to, in some way, figure out how to activate growth.
So we're giving you the magic wand, right? Mm-hmm. You're in charge. You're the mayor. You're the head of planning. You're the governor. What's it going to take to make housing production increase in California?
Well, I think you're already seeing some of the steps, right? The CEQA reform that we've just gone through, huge step. I would hope that you would. I know that's an impact on.
Yes and no, but generally speaking, yes.
I think you're going to see things at a federal level from just some of the incentives and approaches from a tax and financial structure point of view, which will help. But the number one thing is that we have to make the ability to move through any municipality, no matter if it's in California or anywhere else, predictable. And without a level of predictability, if it's going to be 2 weeks, 2 months, or 2 years, you know what you're getting yourself into when you enter into it. And without a level of predictability, and this is probably on many, many fronts, it puts people in a point of pause. And we are in a point of pause because there's not a level of predictability that as I move through the city, no matter if I have one review or 200 reviews, I'm going to move through it in a cadence that is predictable.
And that's huge. I mean, predictability is the lifeblood of development. I was on a call this morning with a client who said, well, I'm worried about this and that. I said, I never make predictions, but you're going to be 100% fine. This project, as you're proposing it, will get approved without question, mainly because of it's in a city that really gets it, and it's in a housing project under density bonus law that there are huge protections for. But anything outside of that, it's kind of guessing these days, especially when you're going to a discretionary entitlement process.
Yeah, I mean, the notion of by right, I guess, is where I
never believe when someone says, "Oh, this is by right." I'm like, you clearly don't know what you're talking about.
In California, yes, but this is not the case in other parts of the country, and so we need to find a sensible approach to what it means to be able to do things with predictability. I'm not going to say by right, but I'm going to say with predictability, because if I own a piece of land and I can see what's possible, and if I do a series of other things, I can get bonuses or other kind of treatments, I take those and then I know predictably what I can do. It's a transparent and a level playing field. Yes, people can come share their opinions on it, but all those opinions hopefully sort of shape a broader kind of landscape, and we can all move forward. And so I think that predictability is a huge, huge piece of it.
I'd be remiss if I didn't have a conversation with you about AI. Very cliche, but at the same time, I know that AI is having big impacts on architecture. I've seen these firms that, They can spit out a massing model for a billion different here, and here's the most, well done one. How are you all responding to AI, dealing with AI, embracing AI? Is it as revolutionary in the architecture space as is in other industries, or am I not going to be sitting here next time across from you? Is there going to be like an AI bot here? What's the future of AI relative to architecture?
Well, well, first of all, I think every industry is going to have to come to grips with what is the impact. What I will say in the built environment is that we are attached to so many variables that are so site specific that it makes AI very challenging to like deploy on a very large scale and have a level of predictability on the outcomes. It's sort of like, yes, you can get the image out of whatever your AI, but you look at it closely and you have 6 toes and 4 fingers. It's like kind of looks close, but then you have to have a level of discernment. And so where we've operated is that we're using automation and we're using workflow improvements for some of the operational things inside of our business. It's allowing us to be more efficient on some of the creative side of where we are operating, which we feel like AI has not figured out how to handle the variable set that is the built environment. Because the city of Santa Monica is different from West Hollywood, is different from Culver City, different from city of Los Angeles. These sites are, not every postage stamp is the same postage stamp size. There are things about orientation. There's just a lot of nuances that get added in. And right now the models can't really factor that in. Yes, they can give you something incredibly generic and that may be enough. But the reality is that the nuance of doing documentation and everything else is still have to be put through a human filter for discernment.
Well, and generic doesn't get the project done, right? Part of where you provide that value add is the market knowledge and the relationships that you have. And I get clients who call me, I'm not just saying this because you're sitting here. The number one question that I get from clients is, do you know a good architect? And the reality is they know lots of good architects, as do I. There's a reason that I'm sitting here next to you. Love working with you guys. We got lots of projects together. And it's because you don't just do the generic, but you also don't do something that is outrageously expensive that no one could possibly build. You kind of are a good sweet spot in between, and you've also got projects built and done. And I think that is a huge value add for clients who are out there thinking about, hey, how do I get this to move forward?
Yeah, I mean, this the space that we've been able to operate in, which we refer to as the space of like uninhibited experience, where we've worked on enough projects, both in the city and at scale, that we understand foreseeably what's coming around the corner in these projects, what you can reasonably really push forward on, take multiple steps beyond, and really pull off. And while we can show you anything, it's nonsensical to like go 10 step functions beyond that. And so what we've done is been able to just gain momentum in that space. That is for us the differentiator for OU, which is this uninhibited experience that allows us to see around corners, and that is definitely in the development space, but it's also in construction and in the documentation that we provide. So at the end, I don't know if any municipality is going to be using AI to review your submittals. So somebody's going to have to sit there and, to your point, describe the project. And we take a huge amount of joy and satisfaction in helping clients get through that process from start to finish.
People want to feel something. They want to look at a building, want to look at a set of plans, and they want to feel the architecture. They want to feel what it's going to be like to walk there with their kids, to walk their dog, to live there, to go to work there every day. And that's hard through AI. You might be able to get up a cool rendering or a cool image, but you guys put the fabric together that actually makes a project become reality.
Yeah, and I mean, it's incredible teams. I mean, all the projects that you just sort of alluded to that we're working on together. I mean, these are enormous collections of people that put this together. And when we think about AI, yes, there may be slivers of that work stream that might be able to be done, but the kind of cross formatting and going back and forth, that is still based on relationships. And for me personally, being in Los Angeles, we have an incredible client set, continue to find and be attracted to great clients who are ambitious and audacious. And I think AI will be a part of that, but it's going to be a complement, not a replacement.
You are ambitious and audacious in your own right. You run a phenomenal architecture firm, and you kind of help keep the trains running on time. So let's talk a bit about your leadership. When you're running this business, it's a complicated business. Being an architect is not always the most fun business in the world. Talk to me about your leadership style and how you approach being a leader, both within your office and externally as well.
I have a great partner and a chief operating officer who I've known for a long time, and she is ultimately running traffic in an incredible way with me. But leadership comes in various forms at various times of the day, at various points in your career. And I think for us as an office, what we have found a lot of success with is, supporting culture from the top down and watching it sort of grow from the bottom up. And that is a lot easier said than done, to be 100% honest. But in a very short amount of time, I feel like we have gained traction in terms of understanding how to run an office that is able to self-sustain itself, financially and creatively, which is not common in the architecture industry. There's a lot of offices who are self-funded through independent means. Somebody, kind of uses it as a hobby, or there's offices that are very much a business endeavor. And, we're in this space where we're creatively able to operate as a business, and it's afforded us to invest and reinvest in the firm in ways to allow us to grow and take on, larger and bigger scale projects and clients. And from a leadership standpoint, that's, continually asking questions and listening and trying to read the room as best we can.
Notoriously young architects just starting out, I think, get the worst pay of pretty much any profession out there. So if you're a young architect who's listening out there, you're thinking about getting into architecture, you like your Lego set at home, what would you say to those folks? What would motivate you to today raise your hand, go to architecture school, and then come work at OU?
Well, I heard this great quote by Sam Altman just recently, and I think it applies to certainly our profession, which is the investment in your career early on is about compounding. So this notion of not choosing like what's the highest paying job, what is, how to change it, every 2 years as quickly as you possibly can. You're really after this notion of compounding experience, the experiences that will allow you to build over a period of time. And for me personally, I have had great, incredible experience. I had great mentors along the way who allowed me to sort of use that. I didn't know it at the time, but in hindsight, use this compounding method to allow me to do what I've done over a fairly short amount of time. And that supportive environment, I think, is what we have at OU, but we try to foster in everybody. Some people enjoy it. Some people it's too much, but it's the Kobe Bryant classic mentality, which is, if there's 2 practices a day and you want to do 2 practices a day, there is somebody who's going to do 3 practices or 4 practices, not because they're asked to, but because they want to. And that compounding of investment in the practice time does yield results, but it's not immediate. You have to see it over a much more mid to long-term sort of investment. And we try to explain that to people as best we can and be reasonable. And, I think what you see at OU is you see fair pay, you see fair amount of time, you see a very fair approach to how we look at projects. And, we have a really great team right now.
So you talked a lot about working hard. I know you work exceptionally hard. Sometimes we have breakfast or lunch and we talk about how hard we both work and maybe a little too hard. So when you're not working, what keeps you busy? What are you passionate about?
Well, as you know, I have 2 incredible kids, 2 super creative kids. Watching my daughter go through design school, fashion school right now I'm wildly intrigued with the making of clothing now.
By the way, you're always very fashionable. I don't know where she got it from, but you've always got, it may always be black, but you've always got like cool little flair or something going on. I appreciate it.
I really enjoy that, watching what she's up to. And I don't know how to sew. Erin taught the girls how to sew super early on. And that's been something that's been really incredible to watch. And then my youngest daughter is playing volleyball and just having a great, great time. So
she got her athletic prowess from you, right?
Clearly. Yeah, definitely not my height. I think early on in my career, I spent an obscene amount of time working. I had a really understanding family construct that allowed me to do that. And I think now at a later point in my life, I'm able to still work, fairly long hours, but I'm also able to balance.
I get those 2 a.m. emails from you. I know you're rocking and rolling.
Yeah.
And early in the morning. Before I let you go, I'd be remiss. You're a super thoughtful guy. We're obviously in some turbulent times. Where are we going to be a year from now? What's it going to look like in terms of real estate, in terms of architecture, development? Take out your crystal ball. What do you see? What do you think? Exactly. He's rubbing his hands together.
Rubbing
Let's
it
see
together. You know, I heard what was the phrase, like, stay alive through 25. I think in 26, we're going to say we stayed alive through 25. You know, I think in a year, first of all, for Los Angeles in particular, I'm really optimistic about where things begin to head. I think there is just a point of capitulation where people have had enough that they need to see real movement.
Well, they've got to get deals done. Otherwise, they're not getting paid. They're not be able to advance in their career and have some satisfaction.
I think it's on all fronts, though. I'm saying this not only from the deal structure, but I'm saying it from communities have had enough. I think folks in development have had enough. I think all this comes to a place where people come to a point where things need to happen. And that will come with an element of compromise, not absolutism. And I think that's the kickstart that starts to move the needle and move things forward. Still, I mean, we travel. We were talking about traveling before. You talk about being from California and talk about being from Los Angeles. And there is a natural affinity internationally about California and about Los Angeles.
Well, you guys were just in Dubai also, I know. And this must have come up.
Yeah, we were in the Middle East at the end of last year, and we were talking about Los Angeles. And it's just the affinity for Southern California is just extraordinary. And I am just reminded about that every time I travel and we talk about, you know, where we're from and where we're spending time. And I think that will continually help, but we can't rest on that. We need to continually move forward and activate things and push things forward. But it is a reminder that LA operates on a global stage. Like we have to operate as a global ambassador for, you know, what the city is, you and me and everyone who has a chance to make things happen in LA. It's a big, big opportunity.
I love your vision. I love what you're thinking. I love your work. I encourage lots of folks to go online, check out OU, see what you guys are up to, and keep doing what you're doing. So thanks, Shawn, for joining us here on the Real Smart Podcast. And make sure, I was told to give a plug, so make sure to click below or subscribe or like this podcast and check it out. And maybe check out Shawn and OU as well. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Shawn, for joining us. Appreciate it. The content of this podcast is for the general informational purposes only and does not constitute legal advice. Listening to this podcast does not create an attorney-client relationship between you, the host, guest, or Alan Matkins. You should not act or rely on any information discussed without first consulting a qualified attorney regarding your specific situation. Any opinions expressed are those of the individual speaking and do not necessarily reflect the views of Alan Matkins or its clients.